Welcome back to Teacher's Best Friend, where we share practical ideas to make teaching more fun and effective. I'm Ken Scheel. I'm the founder of Kiva Planks. And last week I had the privilege of interviewing Bridgewater College professor Dr. Donna Hoskins, as she shared tips for creating conversational classrooms. Let's continue this important discussion. So when you go into a typical preschool, when you're doing your research or doing your just feedback for teachers, what does that look like when you go in a typical visit?
So a typical visit. So teachers feel a lot of pressure when somebody from the outside comes in to observe or collect data or change what they're doing, because there's a lot of good teachers out there. They're very passionate about what they do. And so I always tell them, no pressure. I'm just here to coach. And so a typical session, I would go in, I would observe, I would see how much of this that I'm seeing, and then I would model to the teacher rich discourse, how to have conversations with children. I do it with the children. And sometimes it's just whatever's in the classroom. Other times I'll bring in material, because I do think that material that you put in their hands helps teachers have conversations with children.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that the class observations that are required for pre-K teachers, you're not allowed to evaluate what materials they have. However, I've read some research that shows, and my hypothesis is, going with my research, is that material does matter.
Big time.
It set us up for that dialogue, because if the children are engaged, then we can ask thought-provoking questions. And I don't like to see a lot of, and this comes from the Montessori approach, a lot of toys with batteries. Now, those little bristle bots, I mean, of course, there's a little battery there and they have to program it. But I've seen 3 and 4-year-olds do that before. But I like them to explore the material and to think out loud, and the teachers to ask probing questions and have conversations. And also, teachers just need to talk all the time. And it's not management talk that they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be having conversations with them and like connecting things. Oh, wow, this bristle bot is blue, just like your shirt. And that's the conversation. It's not like, what color's this? And so that's what I'm talking about as far as rich discourse and connecting things to things they previously learned. Wow, that vibrates just like our toothbrush at home. Connecting things to real life for the children and having those ongoing conversations.
That's fascinating to me, that the evaluation, when you say that you're not supposed to take into consideration the materials that they're using. I think just if you have a coloring page in front of them versus a bunch of blocks that they're building, it just seems so obvious that it's going to become so much more interesting and easy to talk about what they're building with the blocks than if they were coloring a page or something. Just the number of choices and things that they might do that kind of open a window for something to comment upon. Just, I think it's night and day, and the choice of materials is one of the critical things that is the difference between whether someone might find this very easy to do or difficult. And so if you don't have the right materials, it may be very difficult to think of a way to respond, but if you have some. So you mentioned play a little while ago, and so I guess play and materials kind of go hand in hand. So could you share maybe some of your favorite materials that, especially for someone getting started, materials that are going to make it the easiest for a teacher to start having some of these rich discourse conversations?
So we mentioned coloring sheets, and we see a lot of conformity in early childhood. Last week I went into a school and I brought little animals of different shapes, and she wanted me to work on colors with the kids. And so we took the little animals' feet and swirled them around in each paint, and they were like, well, we need green. And I said, oh, I don't have any green. We need paintbrushes. Oh, I don't have any paintbrushes. And so we turned that in. So they took the feet of the animals and mixed the paint. And well, he made a bigger painting than I did. Well, why do you think that is? Well, how
Mm.
did he do that? Your animal has smaller feet than this animal. Oh, maybe that's what it is. Could you try this? What would happen if this? And so it can be simple materials like little animals with mixing paint. And so we learned all about colors, and they learned how to create green. And without me saying, do this, do this, do this, they explored with the materials. And so materials can be simple, like little plastic animals. I have some samples here. It can be paper towel rolls, right? Simple materials. Explore, create in a way something that we've never seen before. And so I'm going to a conference this weekend, and I'm going to put them in teams. We're going to do 15-minute challenges with random materials and see what they come up with. And so it can be simple materials. Legos, another good one. So there's some research on like sets of Legos, and you do this step. And so very sequenced steps to build whatever, or just a bunch of parts. And so I like loose parts. And so this is a man, but anyway, you could just use loose parts. And how can you create a Lego design that we've never seen before? And it's not scripted. It's their mind. How did you do that? How did you come up with this? What would happen if we removed the hat from the man? And so it's those questions to do with Legos. This is battery operated, so I'm not a fan, but building Hexbug courses. There's a little Hexbug bumpers that you can, and then you can put these guys in there. Could you make them go up? Could you make them go through? Could you? And so that's teaching a concept, and they like those a lot. And we've even created our own little bristle bots to move around. And so that's engineering. It's interesting, the mag tiles. So this is a square with 4 equal sides. That's teaching a shape. There's mag tiles with numbers on them. So 0. Wow. What if we had 0 mag tiles? Oh, and so that's teaching a number with the material. So this is a good open-ended material. Another I like to do, so I just pulled these out of my children's bathtubs. And so they are chemists every night. And so we've got measurements here. So we do math lessons. We do pouring, which is fine motor. We do the pipettes. And so that's fine motor squeezing. We mix colors. And so this is a little chemistry set for bath time fun. And so that's a fun way to do things. And then the Kiva planks. And so I had to mention that because
that's my favorite. Yes.
That's your favorite. And so some of them, I found, some that are colored, you can paint them, you can do different things with them. And so this is a good material, open-ended. How can you create a house for the Lego to live in that we've never seen before? And so that's neat. This is another favorite of mine, the super space blocks. And so they're magnetic. They function like the mag tiles. These are on back order for quite some time. That's how popular they are. So we can build a fort. The kids can go live in the fort. So much bigger product there, but that's a favorite as well. And when we introduce these things in the classroom, wow, the questions are unlimited. And so I really do think there's something about the material you're using, and it promotes higher level thinking, engagement.
So you mentioned in the course of what you're just describing, open-ended questions, and maybe it's obvious, but could you talk just a little bit about open-ended questions and sort of the power that they have and how they're different from a closed-end question?
So open-ended questions, the child can answer any way they want. So there's no right or wrong. And so what I see a lot of is, how many of you have been to the zoo? That's not a conversation.
Right.
What color is this? Green. One word response. So the open-ended question is, how did you build that? Why did it fall down? So the why and the how questions, we have to see more of that. How does your tower compare to this child's tower? So compare and contrast questions. Evaluate. Why would it be that yours keeps falling down? How could we get it to stand up? And so a lot of times, you may introduce a new thing right there. So, oh, it keeps falling down. Do you think some tape would help us? Oh, the roof, you think that the rain is going to come through the roof? Could we put some additional materials on there? And so we always have open, maker spaces for them to go collect more materials and to add to that. And so I think it's very powerful when you can take two materials and use them together.
Yes.
That's higher level thinking. So you have to know where the child is at, and maybe it starts at level 1 with basic recall, but you see how I'm doing some basic just education with 0, they don't have any when we're using the materials. And so it's powerful to take, the Bristlebot and see if we can use this material with this material. And so a lot of that is powerful, and they're stimulated, they're challenged when you start combining material.
That's interesting. I'm a toy inventor, and one of the things, the foundational concepts of inventing something new is really making a connection between two or more things that other people haven't thought of before. And oftentimes there's a new technology, a new something that becomes available that was never available before, and you connect one thing to another, and that's where fresh ideas come from. And so the idea of even giving them two different things to connect that they hadn't thought of connecting before, just that starts them thinking in the inventive mindset that this changes everything. Once I have a paper towel roll, now everything is different because now I have two different things instead of one. And so we can be creating little inventors with the inventor's mindset in a preschool, and it kind of gets built into their, just the way they even think and approach life by just doing simple things like that. One thing that I thought of at the very beginning of that part, where you were given examples of closed-ended questions, and just how much the burden is on the teacher so much on that. Your life becomes so much more difficult because you have to keep coming up with new questions. You have a question and a very short answer, and they're not that engaged. So you want them to be engaged, but if you're in too much of the habit of the closed-ended questions, it just keeps coming right back to you. You need the next question. And sometimes I've fallen into that before, because it seems like the closed-ended questions, we often have that habit already, but it doesn't go very far if you get closed-ended questions in a classroom where students are used to expounding on things. Sometimes you can get away with that because you ask how many have been to the zoo, and then they start telling you all about the zoo. So sometimes that they overcome that, but your life becomes so much easier, and I think your day more fun and interesting if you're having these real life conversations with them.
And so, I call that like teacher centered. There's a lot of teacher centered early childhood classrooms where they want to ask the question and then the students respond, or they want to set up a coloring sheet with a pencil. And it can be child centered. They're active learners. And why slow it down? I mean, they're active learners. I guess it is teacher centered because we select the material that goes into the classroom, but they have the autonomy to decide how to use it. And we're providing that scaffolding. What would happen if you tried this? And so we're there coaching them and providing that scaffolding. And so I see a lot of teachers, they'll pass out things and then they'll stand back and just watch. And that's a problem too. You have to be engaged with them and having those conversations. I mean, even if it's talking about your life, and wow, that looks like the house I live in. It's 2 stories tall. How many people live in here? Wow, that's less than the amount of people that live in my house. My house has these people in it. And so just having casual conversations like we do with our friends as adults, that's the rich discourse that we want to have happen in early childhood. And I think that a lot of teachers get discouraged because when talking with a young child, the conversation is very disjointed. So I'm building a zoo. No, I'm building a house. No, and so it can go in many different directions within a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And so the teacher's like, well, this is, they get discouraged, I think. But you have to know where to take it next. And it can be very disjointed, the conversation. It doesn't have to be linear. And so I think that's what's so, I think that's what teachers struggle with it a little bit. Because if they're in control, they could be teacher centered and direct all the learning, and they feel more in control that way, and it is less disjointed, and they can accomplish all their learning objectives for the day. But it really can be accomplished. I know they have to be ready for school, public schools. I know they have to be ready for kindergarten and first grade. That school readiness is important, but with this approach, we're giving them those lifelong skills to be good thinkers, to think critically, to analyze, to explore material. And they'll start asking these questions on their own. And that's what we want to equip them with. That's our goal. That's what we're after.
Thanks for joining us today. We have one more segment to wrap up this interview. Be sure to check out that next week.